In just a couple of minutes, I'm going to tell you about a lady who smuggled 2,500 children past armed Nazi guards using toolboxes, potato sacks, and even coffins, and how we can use the lessons from her incredible story to our advantage in our own personal and professional lives today. But to understand how she pulled off one of the greatest rescue missions in history, we have to drop down a terrifying moment where it seemed her luck had completely run. It was late October 1943. The Gestapo were violently pounding on her door. They had come for her and the highly incriminating evidence she had been hiding. If they found what was buried in a small glass jar outside, it wasn't just her life on the line, the fate of thousands of children and the entire underground resistance would hang in balance. So, how did one woman get into this impossible situation? And more importantly, how did she outsmart and empower? The woman behind the door was Irina Sendler. Born in Poland in 1910, resistance was literally in her blood. Her great grandfather had even led a rebellion against the Tsars. Her father, a doctor, died of typhus when she was young after treating poor Jewish patients that other doctors refused to help. Irina grew up with a fierce belief in equality. While studying at Warsaw University, she publicly protested the ghetto bench system. The ghetto bench system was a rule forcing Jewish students to sit in a segregated section. She defaced her own ID card in protest and got labeled of a troublemaker, and the university suspended her for 3 years. Irina was social worker when the Nazis invaded Poland in 1939. They stripped away Jewish rights. At that time, she immediately used her position to falsify over 3,000 documents to provide extra food, shelter, and medicine to persecuted Jewish families. But in 1940, the nightmare escalated. The Nazis forced 450,000 Jewish people into a 1 square mile area known as the Warsaw Ghetto. It was roughly the size of New York Central Park, bordered by high walls and under constant surveillance. The conditions were horrific and thousands died every month from diseases. Irina knew she had to get inside. Because her regular social worker credentials weren't enough anymore, Irina had to forge a pass claiming she was a sanitation nurse, checking for typhus. This allowed her to enter the ghetto multiple times a day. By the fall of 1942, the Nazis began mass deportations to the Treblinka death camp. In response, an underground network called Zygota was established, and Irina, under the code name Yolanta, was appointed director of the Department for the Care of Jewish Children. Here is where the stakes reach a breaking point. Irina began going door to door, disguised as a nurse, asking desperate mothers and grandparents to give their children. When parents begged for a guarantee of safety, Irina had to tell them the brutal truth. She couldn't even guarantee that she and the child would make it past the guard alive. But a quote from her late father kept playing on repeat in her mind. If you see a man drowning, you must save him, even you can't swim. To get 2,500 children out alive, Irina and her network had to become masters of extreme adaptability. They couldn't use the same method twice, or they would be caught. They lightly sedated infants and smuggled them out in bags placed between dead bodies in coffins. They hid kids under stretchers in ambulances and under the seats of tram cars. They bundled children with dirty laundry, put them in potato sacks, toolboxes, and briefcases, or snuck them through sewer pipes. They even used a Catholic church and a courthouse that sat directly on the border of the ghetto, teaching the kids Polish prayers so they could pass the Christian if stopped by soldiers. Once the children were safe, Irina gave them forged identity papers and placed them in orphanages, convents, or the Polish families. But she refused to let their true identities be erased. She wrote their real Jewish name, their new Christian names, and their locations in a secret code on thin cigarette paper. She put these lists inside a glass jar and buried them under an apple tree, hoping to reunite the families after the war. But do you remember that violent knock on the door I mentioned at the beginning? In October 1943, a collaborator cracked under Nazis, tortured, and gave up Irina's name. The Gestapo burst into her apartment and threw her into the notorious Havik prison. For months, Irina was relentlessly tortured by the Gestapo. They broke both of her legs and her feet, demanding the names of the underground leaders and the locations of the hidden children. The only thing standing between the Nazis and the thousands of innocent kids was Irina. She never gave them a single name. Defiant to the end, Irina was sentenced to execution by firing squad in January 1944. She was walking to meet her executioner when suddenly a German officer diverted her course. Unknown to her, her underground network had bribed the Gestapo with the modern equivalent of over $1 lakh to let her go. The next day, Irina walked past posters announcing that she had been shot and killed. She spent the rest of the war in hiding. And when it finally ended, she dug up those glass jars. Tragically, almost all the parents of the 2,500 children had been murdered at Treblinka. But Irina had successfully preserved the children's lives and their true identities. Because of the communist regime in Poland after the war, Irina's story was buried and forgotten. She lived in obscurity until 1999, when 4 high school girls from Kansas stumbled upon a tiny magazine clipping about her while researching a National History Day project. Shocked that a woman who saved 2,500 children while completely unknown, the girls dug deeper. They wrote a play about her called Life in a Jar, and were stunned to discover that Irina was still alive, living in Warsaw at nearly 90 years old. These high schoolers brought her story to the world. Thanks to their project, Irina was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007 and named an honorary citizen of Israel. Yet, Irina remained incredibly humble, suffering from nightmares every night because she felt she hadn't done enough. She passed away in 2008 at the age of 98. Now, how do we apply to our own personal and professional lives? I'll share 3 points from Irina's stories, what I have learned. Number 1, master extreme adaptability. Irina survived because she never used the exact same method twice. If the cars were too dangerous, she used the sewers. If the sewers were blocked, she used the church. In your professional life, when you hit a massive roadblock, don't keep banging your head against the same locked door. Pivot. Find a courthouse on the border. Innovation requires constant flexibility. Number 2, you cannot do it alone. Irina didn't save 2,500 kids by herself. She had a massive social network of at least 10 direct assistants, tram drivers, safe houses, and the orphanages. To achieve something great in business or in life, or you have to empower your team and trust them to execute their goals. And the third most important, act without a guarantee. When mothers asked Irina for a guarantee, she truthfully said she couldn't give one, but she acted anyway. In life, we often wait for the perfect moment or a guarantee of success before starting a business, standing up for someone, or making a major change. Irina teaches us all that true leadership is taking action precisely when there are no guarantees. You don't need a title to be a leader, or you don't need permission to do the right thing. If Irina's stories inspired you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video so her name is never forgotten again. See you in the next one. Thank you.